If you look at the Olympics or at Kona, if you look at any of the top athletes in swimming or triathlon, you'll notice that there's many different styles of freestyle that people will typically swim with. They used to teach one specific style, but if you actually look at that across the board, there's so many different ways to swim fast. And what we like to teach is to go for the style or try and swim with the style that's best suited to you. And that can be impacted from your experience, your height, your body shape, your strength. There's a lot of things that go into that. But there are some common things among all those different styles that we do like to look for and look at. So let's take a look at what are those common things among all the different styles of freestyle that we typically want to try and achieve in the stroke.
In this video I'll be showing you the different things that we look for when we do freestyle analysis. And the swimmer in the video here is Clayton Fattel. He's a professional triathlete. He has a very long, efficient type of freestyle, generally a low stroke rate as well. Now there's a lot of different ways to swim fast freestyle. So what we're going to look for here is what's common among all those different styles of freestyle. So the first view, if we cut back to the start, first view we're going to look at here is the side under the water. What we want to see is 3 touch points at the surface. That is your head, your hips and your heels at the surface. So if we pause this here, you can see that his head, top of the head's out of the water, his hips and his heels are at the surface. When you're in that sort of position, you'll see that you're most likely going to have that horizontal body position. So that's the first thing we want to do in swimming, is reduce our drag. So better body position, horizontal in the water. So limit the drag, reduce the drag. That's the first way you're going to get faster in swimming. So head, hips and heels at the surface. Then we like to look at the kick. Now kick is an individual thing, whether it's 2 beat, 4 beat, 6 beat, doesn't matter as long as you're doing a few things. The first thing is the heels are breaking the surface every few kicks. Not the best view of it there, but we want the heels to be breaking the surface with every couple of kicks. And we also want the kick to be timing with the arm. So you can see here with the left arm, as the left arm goes to pull through, as it begins the pull, the left hip is lifting up and that left leg is kicking down. So timing that together, that's the timing that we want. The next thing we look at is head position. Again, this is an individual thing. We recommend for most people to look anywhere within the range of about 45 degrees in front to straight down. So anywhere in that range is fine. We often see most pool swimmers looking in the range that's a little bit lower, so almost looking straight down. And a lot of triathletes and open water swimmers typically look a little bit further forwards. As we said, it's an individual, but often if you're in open water or you've got a wetsuit on, looking slightly further forwards won't matter, won't impact your body position as much. So anywhere in that range is fine. Then we like to look at the hand entry. You can see here the left hand enters fingertips first. We always want the fingertips to be entering first. Then extending forward, getting to this position out in front, where the fingertips are just below the wrist, wrist is just below the elbow. In that position there, it's much easier to set up your catch the right way, as opposed to if we see you dropping your wrist, dropping your elbow and putting the brakes on. So even though it's a very minor difference in the actual position of the hand there, it makes a big difference with your speed out in front. So we want to have fingertips below wrist, wrist below elbow. Then from there, what you see with the best swimmers in the world, they manage to essentially keep the top part of their arm in the same position while their fingertips point down to the bottom of the pool. You can see how his forearm and hand are set up really well to press back against the water there. Now, it's a little bit different for 50-metre sprinters, sometimes 100-metre sprinters. They won't have as pronounced high elbow catch out the front, just because they don't have the time to set that up. They're not able to reach and extend forwards as much. They will be a little bit deeper and straighter. But for anyone doing 200 metres or more, you'll see this across the board with really good swimmers. So again, fingertips below wrist, wrist below elbow, fingertips tipping down. Especially on this side, you can see that angle. Now what we see with a lot of people is a straight arm pull through. So while that's not bad, it could be better. So we want to work on that if we do see it. The other position we sometimes see is that elbow dropping and the forearm and the hand being quite flat. Now you can see the difference there. With that white line where Clayton's pulling through, he's essentially pushing straight back on the water, and that's going to direct him forwards. That yellow line, kind of pressing backwards but still pressing down quite a bit, and the red line mostly pushing down on the water. So it's not very effective at moving him forwards. That's why we want that position. Then as you pull through, we like to see swimmers entering or exiting just past the hip with the forearm and the hand pressing back out there. Then the next view that we often film is from the side above the water. Now from this view we like to look at the breathing first. So you can see here that breathing position, we've got split vision. So the bottom goggle's in the water and half his head's in the water. So you can see there, split vision. Now obviously if you're swimming open water, you might need to turn a little bit further to breathe if it's choppy, but if you're in the pool and as often as you can, try and get that breath quite low, looking straight to the side. So that's what we talk about when we mean split vision, that bottom goggle in the water. A lot of people have a tendency to lift their head up too high or look too far around. So as best you can, try and keep half the head in. Then the next thing we look at is the recovery, and this is when your arm is coming over the top of the water. So that's your recovery. Now you can see here with Clayton on his right hand, this is the side he normally doesn't breathe to as often. The right hand comes out and he's relatively high and wide with that hand. The elbow comes out relatively high as well. But you can see how the hand swings around quite a bit. So he's very open with that arm. And we see that working really well for a lot of adults because most adults don't have the same flexibility and mobility of a lot of junior swimmers. So they're better off coming around a little higher and wider than what they are sometimes used to. If we look at the left hand, this comes over a bit more traditionally, like you'd see with a lot of pool swimmers, where that hand stays a little bit closer to the surface of the water. So he's not coming too close to his body with that hand. It's very relaxed with the hand and the forearm. Then on the entry, what we like to try and achieve here is, that, again, the fingertips going in first, but that elbow to be elevated. So most people are best off entering as far out as they can go as long as they keep that elbow up. If Clayton was to go any further out, he'd probably land flat. So his elbow, hand and forearm would all land together, and that's going to collect all this air through here, and he's going to drag that down with him. And that creates a lot of bubbles. If he comes in really early, if he was to enter the water here, then it's a long way for his arm to travel in the water, and he's probably going to come up and put the brakes on, have those fingertips up. So looking at fingertips first entry, breathing, one goggle in the water, and open with that recovery, so we don't want to get jammed up coming too close to the body. Now the next view we look at is the bird's eye view. This is from the top. I like to look for the alignment here. So how straight are you keeping your entry and extension? And the analogy that I find works well here is, imagine you've got train tracks in line with each shoulder or each ear. Every time that your hand enters the water, we want it to enter in line with one of those train tracks and extend straight forwards. So always in line with that ear or shoulder. So you can see here with Clayton, left hand enters in line with the shoulder, extends straight forward. So you can see that same straight line all the way through his body there. Right side, same thing, in line with that shoulder, extends straight forwards. Again, nice straight line through the body. So it's like he's swimming down a very narrow corridor. The other thing you can see there, his breathing is straight to the side, and he's always got one arm out in front of his head. So at all stages there's an arm out in front of his head there. Now that's what we call front quadrant timing. If there was no arms out in front of his head at any stage, he wouldn't have front quadrant timing, and he'd probably lose a little bit of balance in his stroke. Now the only time we will sometimes see him or someone not having that front quadrant timing is if they're sprinting, so a 50, sometimes 100 freestyle, they will pull through a little bit earlier because they won't have as much reach and extension. But for people doing 200 metres or more, we'll typically want to see that front quadrant timing. Now the last view is from the front. Here we're essentially looking at your catch and pull through. So if you look at the angle here, the first thing I like to measure here is the angle of the arm just before he's about to pull through past the shoulder. Now I don't have the measurement tool on this app, but I've measured it before. His arm angle here is about 100 degrees from his shoulder to his elbow to his hand. And what we notice looking at all the best swimmers in the world, their arm angle is between 100 and 120 degrees in this part of the stroke. And the reason for that is at that angle, with the elbow out to the side, the fingertips pointing down, then you're really able to engage the lats really well in that part of the stroke, and you're able to get great leverage with that, with your pull through. Now, we often see people being too straight with their arms here, somewhere down like that. And the comparison I like to use here is, imagine that you're pulling yourself out of the pull and you're trying to do it with straight arms. It's very difficult to do. But as soon as you get your elbows out to the side, your hands a little bit closer to your body, you've got much more leverage to be able to do it. So that's the comparison that I find works well there. So that's what we want to try and see, or try and achieve with this part of the stroke. Again, you can see similar sort of angle, about 100 degrees here. Now, what we don't want to see is the hand crossing anywhere under the center of the body. So if he still had that 100-degree angle, but he was under there and his hand was crossing the center of his body, he's not going to be directing himself forwards as well as he could, and he's probably going to lose a little bit of balance and stability. The other thing we don't want to see is this hand being wider than the elbow. So it's okay for his hand to be underneath the elbow. As soon as he goes out here, wider than the elbow, it's a lot more difficult to engage the lats there. So we always want to see that hand at least below or on the inside of that elbow. Then the last thing we look at is the left hand entry. Here, we want to look at the line of the pull through. So they used to teach a really curved S shape. You'll actually see, for most elite swimmers, they pull through fairly straight. They will take a curved path. You can see Clayton comes out a little bit wider at the start, finishes off next to his hip there. So it's almost like he's tracing that outside line of his body with his hand. Comes out a little bit wider, finishes off next to the hip. You can see that path there is going to keep him moving forwards really well. He's not coming out super wide. He's not pulling directly straight through, but it's not a really curved path. So they're the things that we like to look at when it comes to swimming freestyle, no matter what type of style that you use when you're swimming.